Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX, and welcome back to part two of the Haiden Deegan bike claim saga from the 2022 Loretta Lynn's National. Now, we say part two because we do have a part one posted on this feature where we kind of give our background into our investigation and interviews. We have our interview with Brennan Schofield, the rider who actually claimed the bike in there. We do have a few things in that interview that are cleared up or a little bit different than some of the other interviews that have been posted with him. We also interview Tim Cotter from MX Sports along with Mike Burkeen, the AMA official. Their interviews are primarily to understand how the claim rule works, how their involvement works, where the synergies are between those two associations in a bike claim, why Tim Cotter was involved, some clearance from those guys on what their opinion was on the initial interactions with Brennan, and how it went through the process of the actual bike claim being done from the officiators. And then at the end, there is a small portion with Brian Deegan just on his small bit of interaction with Brennan, and also a little background of some things that had happened in the prior months between Haiden and Brennan Schofield leading up to that event. Part two is a little bit different area of the timeline. We've looped these two interviews together. They were both done separately. One with Donnie Luce from Yamaha. He is basically the amateur manager, ATV, and a few other avenues for Yamaha. He was a big part of the original story with Brennan Schofield, as there were some fingers pointed to him to possibly being the person that maybe had, put pressure on Brennan or his dealer to through Yamaha. So we talked to Donnie very carefully about that to get his side of the story and what his involvement was, what was offered to Brennan, things of that nature. And also we talked to Matt Walker, as he was involved right about the exact same time as Donnie Luce. Matt Walker was Brennan Schofield's trainer from the MotoX compound. He talks about his interactions with Brennan, where he felt like his opinion was with it, and why he said what he said to Brennan, his father, and Derek Harris during their meeting. Throughout these two interviews, you will hear comments about Brennan's bike sponsor or main sponsor. That said individual has agreed to do an on-record interview tomorrow. That will be the final part three. There might be one or two other small pieces looped into that. We also spoke to Bobby Reagan from Star and have an interview on record with him. But the primary piece of it tomorrow will be talking to that sponsor to really go towards try to figure out the end of the story. Did Yamaha have any real involvement with him wanting to retract the claim, why his situation ended up where it did with Brennan, things of that nature. We feel like these are some of the most key parts of this story, because this really breaks down, was anything tampered with? Did anybody pull big corporate style decisions to pressure this kid or anything of that nature? Or is it just mostly a big misunderstanding, or that there were so many parties involved that things got misconstrued? It just really was not maybe fully understood by all involved. So as with part one, I really implore everybody to listen to these. As the interviewer in these, I try to stay as impartial as possible. Some of my questions may come across as a little bit direct, a little interrogating. I got commented on part one, but really I just wanted to know the who, what, when, where, why these people were talking to each other, what their direct interactions were, and that was it. I don't want the hearsay as much. I want to know what happened. And ultimately, I implore everybody to listen to all three parts. I know it's a lot. It might take a little bit this week to get through. But if you really want to know what happened with the story and have a real educated opinion, I really recommend listening to them all and then making your opinion at the end based on all the information that we were able to gather. So we're going to jump into it with Donnie Luce, and thank you for checking these out. Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. I am here with Donnie Luce. Donnie Luce works for Yamaha Motor Corporation here in the USA. Donnie, before we really get into the timeline of this Haiden bike claim situation, would you be able to share with us kind of, what your position is, what is you do at Yamaha in relation to the amateur races, and, why you're at Loretta Lynn's?
Well, I am the amateur motocross, ATV, and side-by-side coordinator here for Yamaha. I've been with the company for 16 years. And I'm basically oversee all things that are going on at Loretta Lynn's, between the trackside support, the overall race teams that are there with affiliated with Yamaha, as well as our corporate display. I have some input on that, and work with Sarah Davis on that.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump into the timeline situation. So this whole story for me basically starts mostly with Burkeen, Cotter, and Brennan and Derek Harris around the time the claim is officially filed. So at the point that the claim was filed, had you had any previous interactions with Brennan, his father, or Derek at all during that week, or was your first interaction with this situation when you were notified that the claim had been made?
That's correct. I wasn't notified until it was probably, about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I was up in the um, Amsoil Arena up there and getting ready for our talent show, and I was informed that the claim had been submitted, and so that's the first I heard about it.
What who informed you of the claim, sir?
Brian Deegan had told me that the bike had been claimed.
Okay. From your position, the Deegan, of course, rides for the Star Racing team. It is an amateur program. So for you, where would your involvement be in this, and what what was your next steps once you heard that the claim was filed?
Well, this is all new territory for me, so I was, a little caught off guard. I mean, it's not something that we would, we know the rules out there and believe in the rule, but it was one of those things that it was all new to me. So I kind of took that initiative and asked, Brian. I said, "Do you know the rider's name?" And he gave me all the information and said he was trained by Matt Walker. So Matt's space is just up the hill, so I try to reach out and talk with him, and that's kind of what this all got started.
So what was what was your directive with getting involved in the situation? What was it you were hoping to accomplish, or where were you kind of heading with it once you found out about it?
Well, honestly, I just went up to Matt to try to get a little bit more insight on the rider, and basically it kind of evolved from there. It kind of went in multiple different directions at that point in time, but it really was just a generic conversation between me and Matt, try to get an understanding of what was going on, and it quickly spooled up into a lot more involved meeting than I think he and I thought it would be.
Mhm. So, taking a little bit of flashback before you end up speaking to Matt, being as late as you found out, so you were not present or involved when the AMA reps came to the Star Pit to claim it. You weren't around for any of that timeline, correct, sir?
No,
Before you spoke to Matt, which in turn ended or led into speaking with Brennan, his father, and Derek Harris, did you have a chance to speak with Mike Burkeen or Tim Cotter prior to the situation, or no?
no.
Okay. So you get up to Matt's pit. What you guys kind of end up talking about? Like I said, Matt, we interviewed him as well. He is, of course, Brennan Schofield, or was Brennan Schofield's trainer for the past couple of years. Brennan would stay at his Moto X compound. So imagine, like I said, Matt being his trainer, you went to speak with him. What you guys kind of talk about?
Well, we really just got I got the details of that he trained at Matt's, and I told him that they filed a claim to claim the Star bike, and from there it was basically just basic conversation about that, and then at that point in time, I think Brennan and his dad and his engine builder came driving by with the cart, and Matt went out and tried to get him to come in, and then that's when we all sat down.
Mm-hmm. So just to double over on that part. So basically, the conversation with Brennan, his father, and the engine builder, you guys didn't text or call, reach out. They were actually passing by the pit at the time that you guys had the conversation.
Yeah, I believe so. I didn't have any awareness of any that Matt sent a text or anything and called him over. I think he was just happened to be driving by at that same time. I mean, Matt's place is right off of the main road, so
Yeah.
you kind of have to go by it one way or another as you're going through the facility.
Cool. What ended up happening once they kind of arrived to the tent you guys were all talking in? Who introduced who first? Kind of who was maybe the first person to speak, and where the conversation lead to?
Well, I think Matt started off the conversation, and just asked basic questions. What was Brennan's intentions, and he just said he just wanted to claim the bike. He wanted to ride the baddest 250 F out there, and that he wanted to take it up to Canada to race it the following weekend. So that's what his intentions were. So
during the point after, I believe we spoke to Matt, it sounds like for the most part, he, expressed his opinion to him on why he thought it was not a good career move. His where Matt thought it personally could lead to potentially. At this point, other than Brennan answering the questions, did his father or Derek Harris say much at this point? Did either of them become more involved with the conversation, or?
I think Derek had the most, interaction other than Brennan's initial conversation. So at that point in time, he's very passionate on the rule and Brennan's right to claim the bike. And I think it came very evident to me that we weren't going to change their mind on what their goal was to claim the bike. And as we were going on, we had some additional conversation, and they kind of indicated they've been having some ongoing issues with their Yamahas, and I had asked them to give me a little insight on what was going on with that. And then from there, I said, if you could tell me, some of your components that you're using, I might be able to talk with our trackside support team, try to figure out what's going on and try to find a long-term solution to your problems. And then at the same time, I said, well, if you're needing access to engines, I would basically make 2 engines available to get his practice bikes going. And about that time is when his sponsor from Canada came in, was introduced into the group. He had a brief statement to Brennan, asked to speak to his dad, and the two went off and had a private discussion. And then basically from there, he returned and said that they were going to withdraw the claim. So at that point in time, we felt like it was resolved, and we were all kind of started, going on down another path.
During the point at which Schofield's father and the sponsor were off talking, was there really any further conversation between yourself, Matt, Harrison, and Brennan, or was it kind of just quiet till they got back? Or
there's a little bit of conversation, but I think there was a little bit of Derek tried to spur up a conversation, and I guess at that point in time it was everybody's emotions were pretty high, and it got a little bit of aggressive there, but I think everybody got calmed down pretty quick, and we kind of moved forward from there.
What about the situation did you feel was aggressive? Just tone, and what?
Just tone. Overall tone is,
So speaking of the motors and the support help, I believe I'd heard now was were you made aware at some point earlier in the week that the Schofield or a rider was looking for maybe some help with some damaged parts or something of that nature? Was somebody else in your Blue Crew situation that kind of made you aware of that, or?
I wasn't aware of it until they mentioned it to me, but they had said that they had met with our group that was on site, fielding questions with our Yamaha consumers. So that all came up during that conversation.
Mm-hmm. What for you with the situation other than the engines, was there anything else that you guys kind of felt was like a resolution point or anything you were talking to Brendan about? I know when I spoke with him, he stated that there was maybe an opportunity to go to the goat farm and potentially ride a star bike, because at least his statement has been that he stood behind a big reason he wanted to do was to try the bike, to get to ride the bike. He said there was maybe either talks or some sort of conversation about maybe having that opportunity to get to swing a leg over one. Was any of that ever brought up when you were around? Or
yeah, actually I did present that, and I may have overstepped my boundaries in that regard, but at the end of the day, we're there to try to help our customers out in any way form that we can, and that was another way that I thought maybe I can facilitate that. I still haven't consulted with Star to see if that's even remotely possible, but at the time I thought it was worth at least potentially offering it up there and to see if it would be something we could fulfill down the road.
Mm-hmm. And as I spoke to Mike Burking, of course, the AMA official, earlier about that sort of situation, and at least what he assured me is from a rulebook side, like he goes, people in the past have talked about making claims of sort, and sometimes, where part support or things are presented, that's all within rulebook reasons. The only thing that he stated that is against the basically interfering with a claim would be direct counterclaims, which used to happen like back in the day, especially when the rule existed in pro racing in the 70s. All the OEMs would throw in theirs as well, so it turned into a lottery. So he said that situation, or directly a rider actually being pressured to give it up in fear of losing support. Was there any conversation at any point that you think would have made them think that? Yeah, I know one is there's been a comment from Brennan that he felt like you guys pressured his sponsor, but according to his sponsor we spoke to, that he had never met you till the moment he had walked up to the tent and never talked to anyone at Yamaha, and that he came there because he wanted to speak to Brennan. Would you agree with that? Was there anything that you would add to that, or?
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I hadn't met him till that time he was introduced in the meeting, and I know up to that point there had been no conversation prior to with any of my management above me and Canada up to that point. So I think that's a false statement that was maybe articulated out there.
Other than Brian Deegan, was there anyone else within Star that you were in contact with up before this situation happened? Whether it was, Jensen, Bobby, Coker, anybody else, or?
No, it was just basically interaction with Brian.
Okay. So after Brennan's father and the sponsor returned to the tent and basically said, "Hey, we're good here," was there really much else to the conversation before you guys wandered off to the AMA MX Sports meeting trailer?
No, it was pretty much ended right then and there, and we basically walked up to the trailer, and then we were met in the trailer. The MX Sports staff that was in there was, I think, Tim Cotter, Kerry was in there, and Burkeen and a few other MX Sports staff were in there at the time.
When you guys got on your trip to the trailer, was there any further conversation with Brian's father? Was it pretty mellow and quiet till you guys got there, until the interaction with their
Yeah,
son?
I think that's when we were talking about getting down to Star and trying to do that. That's when that conversation happened, really. So I think it was pretty much basic conversation at that point. And being new to the process, I walked down to the trailer with them. Witnessed them getting their money back. Tim Cotter asked if I wanted to take the bike, and I said no. We'll just leave it with you until the morning, and then and then Star Racing would come and pick it up. So that's kind of where it ended.
Okay. The moment when Brennan basically repealed his claim, I believe, like I said, there was multiple people in the trailer, but it's primarily Kerry Joe, Burkeen, and Tim Cotter. I know Tim asked him, I believe Burkeen did as well. Did they both ask him, "Are you sure? Is this your decision?" How much, pre-emphasis did they have with him about his decision to repeal his claim?
I do recall them asking that question to him, and he did say that he would repeal that claim.
Did at any point, so far what we've gone is kind of a mixed response here. Brennan states that when he was asked that he was hesitant and had a comment about not quite being his choice, but that he would have to go through with it, etc. Some of the counterclaims we've gone are a little bit more just dry and cut, that he went through with it. In your moment, did you sense or hear anything from him that made him sound like he was coerced, or did he just say it was all of his decision, he was good with it, or?
I do recall him making a statement that it basically was, it was his choice. He would like to move forward, but he's kind of forced to do it, through, what happened with this conversation with his sponsor.
Okay. Did he say the sponsor forced comment out loud to the?
No.
Did not. Okay. So he did not say those words to those guys.
No.
Okay. After that, when you guys left the trailer, did you guys have any further conversation before they returned to their pit, or?
No.
Have you, even the next day, did you have any follow-up conversation with Brennan or his father the next day, or, after the fact?
I have received emails from his dad, Craig, and basically regarding the engines. Unfortunately, I had a short week, and I was also, called back to Loretta's for the ATV race. So I haven't followed back with them yet, but I plan on following back with them here starting probably tomorrow.
with kind of with the live, what's happened with the situation, would you say you guys are still committed to that commitment, or is there any questions for you guys now with just kind of the way this whole thing has unraveled, or how do you feel about it?
Well, I think we're going to follow through in what I committed to, to try to help him, in any way we can. I mean, that's kind of the goal of our Yamaha amateur program, is to help the riders as much as we possibly can, and that won't stop.
Okay. That pretty much covers all the timeline I have of your involvement, and what anybody else has brought up to my attention of where, when, why. Do you feel like there's anything that hasn't been addressed where you were or weren't involved? Anything that you feel like you need to clear up or state, sir?
No, I believe everything's been addressed, and I think we've addressed some of the issues that really came over, statements that came up that were maybe not fully correct, but at this time I'm good.
Okay. Last one would be just, I guess, your I wanted to get your opinion or take on the claim rule itself. Have you ever, I think you said, you've never encountered anything like this, or have never had to be involved in a claim situation up until this point?
Mm-hmm. No, this is the first time I've ever had to be involved with one, in the 16 years I've been with Yamaha. And, I believe in the rule. I think it's a good rule. At this particular situation, unfortunately, it's just not ideal for everybody involved.
Okay. Actually, I do have one last one. So when after the claim was dropped, how was just clarification reasons, how was Starr or Deegan informed? Were you the one that ended up going to their camp to inform them, or did AMA send officials that you were aware of to inform them? Or
I walked down and told them that they can pick up the bike at 6:30 in the morning the next day.
okay. As the event wrapped up until the interviews came out there today, did you ever hear anything, or was anything presented to you that made you feel like that things had not maybe taken place as they had initially hoped, or there were any maybe regretful feelings or anything of that nature? Or by the time you left the event, were you confident in everything that had happened that evening?
Well, by the time I left the event, I felt I was confident in how everything transpired. It's definitely been a little bit different case scenario now with all the social media efforts that are going on. But overall, at the venue, I was okay with how it all ended up.
Okay. I guess I said so. That's the last of my questioning. One last opportunity. If you have anything else you'd like to share, anything you don't feel it's addressed, sir, it's all on you, sir.
No, I think I'm good.
Thank you very much for your time. To answer questions. If anything further comes up you'd like to chat about, please reach out at any point.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX, and we have Matt Walker here. Matt, you're a person that is named in this story so far by a few different people we have interviewed in a certain segment of it. So we wanted to reach out to you and sort of get your side of what you experienced, what your perspective, and what the timelines were that you were or weren't involved in this bike claim situation. So before we get into the timeline, we'd like to ask you, the rider himself that made the claim, Brennan Schofield, kind of what your involvement is with him, how long you've known him, if you can give us kind of just a brief overview of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I've known Brennan Schofield for, the story says 3 years. It seems like a lot longer than 3 years, but yeah, they I've trained other Canadians before Brennan, but since Brennan, we've trained a lot of Canadians, and Brennan being one, and we've had a good run. You know what I mean? This is a kid that has been through our program. This is a kid that we have had a lot of success with racing. So yeah, I've known him a long time.
Okay. So starting on the timeline of the bike claim, pretty much everybody we've talked to so far is where their first moment of the bike claim is talking to, Cotter, Burkeen, and Brennan. It started with them going up, to the office to start the claim. What was the first instant that you knew the claim was happening, being that Brennan trains with you? Did you know anything about it before the event? Had he mentioned anything, or did you find out when they went to make the claim or afterwards?
So I found out about the claim Friday evening. It was late Friday evening. We had a kid that had just won the championship in the 50 class, so we were there for that. And I go to leave, and I got a text from Brennan's sponsor. Said, "Hey, I'd like to have a private conversation with you." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, I just assumed it was I don't know, about his son, because his son races and I train his son. I just assumed it was about that. And then the next text said, "It's not about my son." So anyway, I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to get some food, but where are you guys at?" And he goes, "Well, we're in town." So I said, "Okay, well, let's just meet at the front gate of Loretta's." And he says, "Okay." So pull up there. It's Friday night, late Friday evening, and Brennan's sponsor pulls in with his son, not the son that races, but the son at the dealership that works with him. And they proceed to drop a bomb on me and saying that that Brennan has filed a claim for Deegan's bike.
Mm-hmm.
And when they told me that, I was like, "What?" Like it didn't even
Register.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it didn't. Hey. And he said, "Yeah, we he just says that we don't like it." I'm like, "I don't either." You know what I mean? Like that. I'm telling them the same story that I'm telling you guys right now. Like the claiming a bike never goes well, especially not if it's Brian or Haiden Deegan. But it doesn't go well for anybody, because you're always labeled as the person who claimed this bike, and that's what I'm telling the dealership. Like that guy, Chris, I'm telling him, like, "Dude, this shit is, not good." And he goes, "Yeah, we don't want to be part of it." He says, my name's on that bike. I don't want that shit to be brought through the mud over this. This isn't our, something that we agree with. And I'm like, so anyway, it gets, it almost ends. He goes, "Listen, I'm going to go have a talk with Brennan's dad and get this thing dropped, because this is stupid." But it was kind of led on from the beginning that, well, not led on. I mean, he said, yeah, and he had his motor builder with him while he filed the protest. And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, they file a protest. The motor guy goes with Brennan to do it. And, and then anyway, it's just like, he's like, "Man, this is going to be a shit show. We're going to drop it. I'm going to go speak to him and see if we can't drop it." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, as he and I are talking about what has happened, I get a call from Donnie at Yamaha. And initially I thought it was about the video that I had just posted of the 50 rider, because it was an awesome video. And so I kind of, for whatever reason, thought it was about that. But it wasn't. It was to tell me that one of my riders, Brennan Schofield, had just filed a claim for a bike, for a starter Yamaha, and he did it with his motor builder. And so I said, "Dude, that's so crazy. I'm just now," I tell him, I'm like, "I'm freaking hearing this for the first time right now. I got Chris right beside me. And don't worry, he's going to go talk to the dad and just squash it." So Donnie says, "Well, can you come back to your pits? I want to talk to you about it." And so I was like, "Okay, no problem." So I do. I turn around, tell Chris bye. I thought he's going to go handle it. And go back and meet Donnie at my pits. And then that's where the story really, I guess, started,
So I believe what you said is you had saw Brennan, his father, and Derek passing by after. Well, actually, sorry, before that. So you meet Donnie Luce at your pits. What was your conversation with Donnie when you initially caught up with him?
So Chris Pryor didn't really know the ins and outs of. He just knew that Brennan had filed a protest, and so he kind of just told me that, and just told me that he was gonna go have a talk with the dad, because, like I said, he didn't want to be drugged through it. And so Donnie, as I sat down, he's like, dude, the motor builder's doing, we think he came there with the kid and this, that, and it just seems awfully suspicious. So Donnie's just kind of filling me in on the time thing, like how it all happened. But literally 2 to 5 minutes later, like it wasn't very long, as he's telling me this, freaking Brennan and his dad and the motor builder are in front of my pits on the golf cart, right? And I'm like, well, shit, there they are right there. Hey, Brennan, get over here. And I wave them over, and they come over, and they come and they sit down, and but I didn't know it was the motor builder till later. I just knew that it was Brennan and his dad, and it was some guy on the back. And they come and they sit down, and everybody's introduced, and Brennan, or the motor builder, says that he's an engineer by trade, and he just starts going in on Donnie about Yamaha this and Yamaha that, and this is this and this is that, and just mainly just does all the talking pretty much. And and then when he got done doing whatever he needed to say, I made my stance known about what I felt like, and I just said, listen, guys, I've been in this sport my whole life, right? As your trainer, listen to me, as your trainer, you do not want to be mixed up in a claim. It doesn't end well. That's what I told him, my situation or my stance never once wavered. It didn't waver one time. It started and it ended with the same thing. Don't do it, so that's how the conversation started going, right? It was this motor guy going in on Yamaha, and then it went to me telling them they don't need to be doing this because this is something that attaches to you, And I say, Brennan, look, dude, 1 year ago we were here, you won a championship, right? A few months later, we go to Mini O's, you win more championships, right? Like, dude, you're a great rider, a great person. You don't want to be labeled and known as the kid who claimed Haiden Deegan's bike. Come on, man. It was clear to me from the jump that somebody else was pulling the strings, and the more that I sat there, Michael, just the more it just kind of came out.
So after you kind of said where you were at with it and explained your thoughts and what basically your opinion being Brennan's trainer, sharing your opinion of, what you thought he should do from this situation on, I believe is when Donnie Luce, started to talk to Brennan and his dad a bit more. During this time, at least in the interview we had with Brennan, he claimed that you were starting to talk to his sponsor, and in his opinion, he thought that's where some of this started. But what you had mentioned earlier is he had reached out to you first. You two had already connected well before this meeting had actually taken place.
Yeah, they were the first ones to tell me. So yeah, in the middle of the meeting, I didn't talk to Chris. I assumed that Chris was already going to go find them, that this is the sponsor was going to go ahead and find them and squash it. But literally 5 minutes into this meeting, this all gets said, and then Chris walks in. Okay. Now, this is what's important. Chris didn't know Donnie Luce. Right? This is the sponsor. He didn't know Donnie Luce. He didn't know, he come in. I think the motor guy was still jawing, and the sponsor says, sorry, I hate to just come in and interrupt, but Matt, would you please introduce me to everybody in this circle? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, Chris. This is Donnie with Yamaha. He shakes his hand, and then this is Brennan, and this is, and this is the motor guy. What's your name? You know, he tells him his name, whatever. He goes, okay. He says, listen, Craig, who's Brennan's dad, listen, I want to have a private conversation with you. And when we're done with this conversation, I think you're going to have a different look on this whole deal. That's exactly what he said, right? Verbatim of what he said. So they walk away, okay, say what they got to say. They come back. And when they come back, Craig, the dad, says, you know what? We made a mistake here. I'm sorry. We're just going to drop this thing and let this whole thing go. That's what happened.
Before the sponsor showed up, we know that Donnie got to speak to Brennan, his father, and what we've heard from the couple stories so far, the interviews we've been able to do, is that Donnie had spoken to him about just kind of explaining to him, like, hey, this bike can't be serviced, you know, in the ways that you guys would be able to. How are you guys looking at doing that? And sort of talk to him about the bike and more the reason why they were doing it. From your perspective, is that all true? Did Donnie just kind of talk to him more about the bike and asking him why they were looking at processing the claim? Do you feel like there was anything so far that's been left out on, you know, what Donnie was talking to them about?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think from just sitting there, he wanted to know these simple questions, you know, like, why, you know, what do you plan on doing here and this and that and the third? And, you know, they, I'm not sure that they had a clear answer on that. The only thing that was clear was they wanted to take that bike racing in Canada. Walton. Yeah, they wanted to race it in Walton. And they thought that by racing that bike that they could, you know, be faster.
What at any point before the sponsor stepped in and stepped aside with Brennan and his father, was there any talks of a resolution per se between Donnie and yourself and Brennan? Was there any talk like, hey, you know, what are we going to do here? Is, you know, what would make this right by everybody? Was there any sort of resolution conversation or like kind of finding, you know, an end path?
Well, you know, the father started with saying, you know, how he had blown up some bikes at Moto X, and, you know, he felt like that, you know, they're out of all this money because they blew up some bikes. And, you know, so when they're saying this, Donnie is like, okay, so you blew up a couple bikes, a couple motors. So 2 motors, you know, like, I don't know, just saying things like that. It was never was anything concrete. It was just more or less just, so you blew up 2 motors. So, you know, more or less something like that. And then
I know Brennan did bring that up. He said that there was a conversation about, you know, about some crate motors. And then there was also conversation, because I know Brennan's personal stance in this, when asked a lot, is, hey, I want to ride the bike. Like, I want the opportunity. I want to try it. Was there, did you overhear the part where there was, you know, either, you know, as an option or sort of talked about, hey, well, maybe we could have you come down to Go Farm and actually get to try one or something like that? He had talked about, maybe him and Donnie had spoke about that. Were you there for any of that?
Again, there was a lot of hypotheticals in that whole thing. You know what I mean? A lot of hypothetical loose terms thrown around. But there never was a bribe feel. Okay. And 2, there never was a bully feel. And that is what's getting portrayed. Right. And let's don't get off topic of that. Nobody bullied them. Nobody, especially not me, not the trainer. What do I have to gain by bullying my own kind, my own people? You know what I'm saying? All I've done from the start was let them know that this is not a good look. It's going to attach to you for the rest of your life, period. You know what I'm saying? So I don't I don't want to get things misconstrued here and say hypotheticals, because this is the facts. You know what I mean? Before Chris came over to my pits, he didn't know Donnie Luce. So the whole Yamaha called and threatened to pull a dealership bullshit is crazy. And just the whole, we bullied him. That's nonsense. And that hurts. It really does.
So you guys had this, your guys' group interaction. The sponsor comes down, they have their interaction. At what point it's like, okay, they're like, we're going to rescind the claim. So Brennan, his father, and Donnie Luce head towards AMX Sports. And that's the time at which your guys' group interaction ends. From the moment that started to end it, did you at any point see, feel, or think there was anything that was said by Donnie or from any Yamaha stance where you think that anybody was threatened? Because again, that's, you kind of touched on it already, but just to give us the broad sense of, yes, amongst that time, you didn't see or hear anything that was brought up as a threat to the dealer, a threat to the kid, or anything of that standpoint.
Absolutely. 100% no, right? Without question. There was never any of that. When they walked back to drop this thing, everybody shook, and then it was said, listen, don't, this is done. I think the dealership said, listen, Brennan, don't talk about this shit, because it's just going to just continue to muddy the water. Right. And that obviously didn't happen.
So from the time at which they left to go rescind the claim, is that basically the end of any involvement that you had in this process? Did you at any point after that speak to Donnie any further, anybody from the Star camp or anybody from Deegan's camp or Brennan's camp after they pretty much parted ways to go rescind the claim?
No. When they walked out of my pits, I didn't speak with them again. I never once spoke to Star Racing or Brian Deegan or any of that. When we shook hands and they agreed that, dude, this was dumb. That's it. They left. I didn't see Brennan again. I didn't see, I didn't even see Donnie again. I didn't even see Donnie the final day, the Saturday, being at Loretta's. Come to think of it, that was it.
Yeah. And then from your situation, I believe we touched on before, but that bike claim was at the end of Brennan's last moto with Deegan. That was the third and final 250B moto on a kind of mid-afternoon Friday. So you didn't have any further interaction with Brennan into Saturday. You didn't have any more racing left or anything of that nature that you talked to him about?
I'm not sure if that was his final day, but I have not spoken to Brennan since we shook hands and said that, is it, you know what I mean? That was it. Last time I spoken to him.
Okay. So I think that kind of covers the timeline at which you were involved in the story, sir. So that's the end of my questions. Is there anything that you would further like to share? Anything that you want to expand upon or clear up, or anything you feel like you need to speak on?
Well, I do want to make sure that it is noted and said that for 10 years of building my business of this training facility, in this training facility world, I have always had my people's back and still do, and for it to be said that I haven't, or I bullied my people, or, turned on them, that's just the ultimate dagger. You know what I mean, Michael? Like you've learned as a racer to have thick skin and to, but when it gets said that you're a bully and, you turn on your people, like it just hurts. And I would never, so let it be 100% known. And my position has never wavered. I only ever spoke to Brennan and his dad about this as a claim of, or as a trainer of, don't do this because it is going to attach to you, right? It's muddy, it's nasty. Don't do it, you know? And that was it. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak and for people to hear my side.